Okay, so it's nice to have you back on the show, Tony. Let's jump right into it. Not a lot of time, a lot of issues. You recently said if Trump is elected again, that you will leave the country. So do you think he's going to get another term? And more importantly, if so, where do you even go?
So at the moment, Michael, and I find that I'm a little bit bipolar on this, I am feeling better about the likelihood that he will not be elected. And the reason is that I think he will be convicted. I think it will strengthen the loyalty of his base, but the election's not going to be decided by his base. The election's going to be decided by a tiny group of voters, maybe 100, 200,000 voters in 4 or 5 states. And those people don't mostly want a convicted criminal as president. I think that's still a line that people who sort of sit on the fence won't jump over or cross.
Yeah, look, I'm not so sure that it's going to be decided by 100 or 200,000. Me personally, I truly believe that it's going to be a massive blue wave. I believe it's going to be an ass-kicking significantly greater than what is being predicted right now. I really do. I believe women, for the most part, will ultimately decide this election. And I think overwhelmingly, they despise him as a direct result of just merely Roe versus Wade. I think the Gen Zers despise him for taking away, and they don't see it so much as, let's say, Roe v. Wade as they do about taking away a woman's right, which the Gen Zers fully understand, and they are much more compassionate and empathetic as a group. So I'm not 100% certain that it's going to come down to even that sort of a number, 100 or 200,000. I really do believe it. But more importantly, because I'm kind of confronted with a very similar situation, I'm thinking about, where do I go? For my safety, I am concerned. Where do I go?
And you should be.
Well, good. Where do you go? We'll be neighbors.
Well, I'd welcome you there. I'm going to move to Amsterdam. I have a daughter who lives in Amsterdam. I have an apartment in Amsterdam. I bought it slightly before I knew I needed it, or I needed it as an option. But you can live in Amsterdam. You don't have to become a citizen. If you have a business of some kind that you run there, you can. I probably shouldn't say this out loud. But it's a beautiful city, and would mean I got to be with my grandkids. And I don't want to leave the United States, particularly at this stage in my life. I'm an American. I'm a New Yorker. I really would like to stay. I really believe that this is my home, but I don't feel safe, and you shouldn't feel safe. But here's the interesting thing, Michael. There are a lot of people who shouldn't feel safe. When a authoritarian leader takes power, they go after their enemies, and they do it in the way that Putin does.
Right. All of their enemies.
All of their enemies, and they get more and more paranoid. And, just watch Putin go and take it back to many other dictators. I think Trump, not necessarily because he does this consciously, but I think Trump sort of thinks of himself as the equivalent of a Mussolini. I think that he will round up people. I think he will try to subvert every form of the government that he can in the service of consolidating his power. The one hope I would have about Trump as president is he's not smart, and he's very, very emotionally volatile. I don't know if he has remotely the discipline and the focus necessary to do the level of damage that he'd like to do.
Oh, I don't know. I hope that you're right, but I'm not 100% certain that I agree with that. In fact, it's because that he is not smart that he's even more dangerous, because what he intends to do And again, these are not Michael Cohen's words. These are not Tony Schwartz's words. These are his words. He is going to attempt to consolidate all power of the government by stripping the legislative branch and the judiciary of their co-equal powers, confer it upon the executive branch, making him the king, the monarch, the ruler, and so on. But what he also said that is extremely concerning and should be rightfully said by you, a lot of people, is that he intends to use SEAL Team 6 to round up his enemies, his detractors, his critics. And there are many of them. He talked about General Mark Milley. He talked about the president of MSNBC. He talked about a bunch of journalists, right? From the Washington Post to the New York Times and across the entire gambit. Because he's not smart, and he now has everybody signing these loyalty oaths to him, which to me, again, is crazy that a president is demanding loyalty the way a king or a supreme leader would, that he's going to use that and just do massive global roundups. You know, it's really, to be honest with you, it's demented thinking. And I'm saddened. I really am. And I'm concerned, but I'm saddened about the fact that there are Americans who truly don't think about what Donald says. They're just all in. They're all in for the cult.
Yeah, they're not in rationally, we both would agree. It's not coming from their head. It's not coming from logic. It's not coming from any kind of genuine awareness of who the man is that they're all in for. So it is cultish, as it always is with authoritarian leaders. And he's rewritten the playbook for dismantling democracy in the United States. Nobody thought it was possible before. If there's anything Trump's good at, it's rallying people around an insane cause and an insane person. You know, it's interesting to think, Michael, just to go to your earlier point, it's interesting to think about the list of enemies that he has and take you back to Nixon's enemies list, which was, you know, relatively modest in size. I wonder, does he have a written enemies list? And is he already got people planning that roundup? I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I wouldn't even be surprised if it has an order in which he plans to do it. Because, vengeance and domination are the two driving motivations for him, other than money, that animate his life.
Yeah, especially the retribution. He's a firm believer, and I'm sure you've heard him say this many times as well. If you come at me, if you hit me, and I don't know why he constantly uses that word, but if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back 10 times harder. So, for example, telling the truth, by being a subpoenaed non-party witness against him, I am now an enemy. I'm an enemy.
Of course.
Forget about the fact that he did nothing within which to protect me himself, threw me to the wolves, but I should then get chomped up by the wolves, ignored, right? Now here I am, subpoenaed by government to testify. I will tell absolutely the truth. It doesn't benefit him, the truth, and so he's going to try to hit me 10 times harder. That's his game plan.
He has.
That's who he is. You know, and now there's the stag order. Yeah. You know, there's the stag order that's going to be coming out the day after this podcast airs. So we don't know, obviously, what the result is going to be. But I am hopeful that Judge Merchan holds Donald's feet to the fire, because he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows the dog whistle that he's blowing, and he knows whom is listening to it, his MAGA supporters. And I really don't want to be that test case. I am concerned. You know, the level of hate that has been coming at me since he put out these posts, it's intensified by at least 500%.
Oh
I don't
gosh.
want to be the test where everybody's like, yeah, we should have actually done something, right? They need to start protecting witnesses too.
Yeah, it does feel a little 1939-ish in this moment. And, you know, to make these analogies to Hitler is a huge leap. But I really think that Trump is limited in what he does only by the ability to get it done. That there is, as is true with all sociopaths and most authoritarian leaders, there is no conscience involved here. There's no guilt. And boy, you are freed to a lot of awful behaviors if guilt and shame are not in your vocabulary. Yeah. But I have a question for you. My question for you is, as you think of these folks who are part of this cult, and you think of how do you loosen the hold and that they, or the connection that they have with him, when you think back to your being part of that cult, what explained against all rationality for you why it made sense? Because if you can answer that, it's a window into what could be understood by not the most extreme versions of MAGA, whatever you call it,
maggots,
but certainly by people who are not absolutely sure which way to go.
Yeah. It's because there's something missing in people's lives. There was something missing in my life. It wasn't money, right? And it wasn't power or money. It was excitement. It was star power. There's a big difference. So when I first joined, and I want to be clear about this, when I was knee deep in this dumpster cult of Trump, he was a myopic real estate guy. You know, he was a television celebrity with The Apprentice. You know, he had the Miss Universe, doing some really kind of smallish real estate deals. You know, it was exciting. It was very different than those that ended up joining the cult when he's president, where every single thing that comes out of his mouth has not just a national implication, but an international implication. When I joined the Trump org, the first thing he said to me is, you're going to be my special counsel. You're going to specifically work and answer only to me. And I felt that was a tremendous honor, right? It's Donald Trump, for God's sakes. Then he had me put together this entire deal for the NCAP Golf redevelopment project, which was a 1,000-acre landfill remediation. I've never done anything like that. So for me, it was stimulating because I was interested in figuring this thing out, building 10,000 units, building a city, literally, that would look like Crystal City out of a movie. One stop to New York City. And it was exciting. He put me on the board of the Miss Universe organization. It was only him, Alan Weisselberg, and me, right? On top of that, he made me co-president of Trump Productions. So I was working with the folks as well on The Apprentice and finding people. It was exciting. And I was missing that in my life. I was missing that Donald Trump star power. When you walk downstairs with him to go grab a freaking burger, all of a sudden, you know, just the crowd started. And while I understood that they weren't taking pictures of me, the fact that you're in that circle, right, that, or as like in Meet the Fockers, right, that circle of trust, it was very, very exciting. And you kind of don't want to leave the circle. So you end up doing things. It's very different than the maggots right now who are in the cult. They're in the cult mostly because they're trying to keep white privilege. Donald talks to white privilege. He talks about racism and sexism. He talks about misogyny and xenophobia, homophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. So these folks that have this ingrained hatred, right, for anybody that's different, Donald is their leader.
Yeah, and the fact is that when people have hatred, I don't think hatred is what is at the base of in your core. I don't think it's what you're born with. I think it's something that emerges from your conditioning, from your socialization, from your experience, maybe from not getting the kind of caretaking you need. I think actually that the folks who feel this, the message you've just shared is you can't get from outside what you're missing inside.
Yep.
And that, I think, is the biggest single learning from what we're seeing now. If you think that more money or more status or more power or more connections or more fame is going to make you feel fundamentally better, you are screwed, because it won't happen.
There's something else that I say quite often in terms of Donald's enemies list, and I wish to God that they would listen to this podcast. We've done over 300 million plus downloads so far. My hope would be that some of these uber rich, like the 1/100th of the 1% that control 80% of our country's cash flow, I wish that they would listen to this, because here's why. When you said that Trump is going to go after his enemies, he'll do that. I totally agree with that. He's going to do that with jurors if they convict him. He's going to do that with politicians, that especially you take the folks like the Jamie Raskins, the Moskowitzes, all the Democrats that have gone, the Adam Schiffs of the world. He'll do that. He'll go after Supreme Court members as well. He'll go after everybody. He's going to go after folks in the media. I suspect he's going to go after me as well, right? But here's the thing that I think that 1/10 or 1/100th of 1%ers, the Bezoses of the world, the Elon Musks, the Bill Gates, the Paulsons of the world. Here's what I truly believe in. Harold Hams. These are the folks that are throwing the $800,000 per plate fundraisers for him. I say he's going to round up the rich too. And he's going to do what Mohammed bin Salman did. He's going to force them to turn over their cash, because that's what he cares about. You agree?
Completely. I mean, that applies to the very, very rich. They're the most vulnerable. I mean, just look at what happens in Russia. I mean, if you have a ton of money, it belongs to Putin, or at least he has the ability to access it whenever he wants. And if you go against it, also Mohammed bin Salman, this is true of, there's only one boss. So yes, he will go after those people. Most of those people, not most of those people, some of those people you just named, I suspect understand that risk. John Paulson clearly doesn't, because he's throwing the fundraisers. Jeff Bezos isn't throwing fundraisers for Trump.
But they're supporting him. The Elon Musks of the world, like for example, on his X platform, they're supporting him. I've never seen anything. Yes. Understand Elon Musk. Let's say he's worth $300 billion, right? An obscene amount of money. You know better than most what that does to Donald's psyche. He can't figure out why Elon Musk is worth $300 billion, and he's basically, in his mind, he knows what he's really worth, $1.2 billion, $1.3 billion, $1.4 billion, right? He doesn't understand it. What's the easiest way to become worth $300 billion? and you have all the power in the world, you are the dictator, the monarch, the Führer, the supreme leader of America, what's the easiest thing to do?
Take theirs.
Easy. And by the way, you take just these 5, 6, 10 guys, he's the first trillionaire in the world.
At the other end of the spectrum, Michael, and equally incomprehensible to me, are the people who've escaped authoritarian countries, landed here in the US, and found a way to build successful lives, who then end up, some significant percentage of them, being supporters of Trump, even though they left those authoritarian countries because they had no freedom, because they lived under the rule of a single authoritarian leader.
Right.
They lose that awareness. And I'm not saying I imagine this conceptually. I've met them over and over and over again. So we're back to the cult. We're back to when the inner emptiness is deep enough, you will lose your rationality in looking for solutions to the despair that is fundamentally there. Nobody talks about this with Trump. Underlying all of the bluster are two things: a deep sense of worthlessness, and now I forgot the other one. That's the core one. A deep sense of worthlessness is what Trump feels. Oh, I remembered. Despair. He spends his time, energy in trying to hold that despair and that feeling of worthlessness at bay. That's where his energy goes. And so all the things you see doing have that in common. This will keep me from having to feel what I find to be unbearable.
Interesting. But, on that same topic, you said that Donald Trump lives in a pot of boiling rage 100% of his waking life.
Yes.
Probably true. But what does he have to be so angry about? Daddy left him a shit ton of money, right? In fact, had he done nothing, he'd be worth probably more than what he's worth right now, which I think is kind of comical if you think about it. I mean, he doesn't believe in anything. If you don't believe in anything, what could you be mad at? Why so mad?
No, why so mad? I think I can answer that pretty confidently. His rage is that he didn't get loved and taken care of.
Oh,
fine, you can dismiss.
Boo fucking hoots.
No,
Cry
you
me
can
a
say
river.
boo-hoo. Michael, you can say boo-hoo as a grown-up now, but you have to understand that when a child is not taken care of, who is 2 or 5 or 8, when a child feels neglected or abused, and Trump got both. I mean, he didn't get it as badly as some people do, but he got both. He had parents who were incapable of any kind of love or connection. You are terrorized. That child self that is terrorized lives on in you if you haven't found a way to work through it, and he has not, as most people haven't when they have that experience. That lives on in you. And that feeling of rage, it's not fair, I'm not being taken care of, I'm not getting what I need, is a 4-year-old's feeling or a 2-year-old's feeling, but it exists in your adult body. He thinks it's people in the current world. No, this was when he was young, and it was terrifying, and it was despair-inducing.
But then
welcome to my psychological perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say that. We need Mary Trump on the show. So my question then to you is, one would think that if you felt this sort of neglect, that as a parent yourself, that you would try desperately to do the exact opposite, to overcompensate because of the feelings that you walk around with on a daily basis. I've had dozens of conversations with Don Jr. about this. I've heard it from Tiffany, right? Where they were fundamentally ignored as children. Whether it was Don, Ivanka, or Eric, the same shit. And everyone's like, oh, but not Ivanka. He was a fan. Bullshit. He cared about himself and himself only. Yes, she probably spent more time with him as a child because she had her modeling career and he thought it was cute, the whole bit, but he was not the active parent at all. By the way, neither was Ivana, all right? So these kids grew up. There was a guy named Vinny Stelio who used to work for the company. Phenomenal guy, phenomenal. I remember when Donald was contemplating on firing him. And all three kids came into Donald's office and said, we're not bullshitting you, Pop. If you fire Vinny, we're leaving. Vinny raised them. He was the driver, but Vinny kind of raised them. You don't see the same sort of anger and meanness and rage in Ivanka. You don't even see it in Eric. Eric's just an idiot. And you don't even see it in Don Jr., though his actions, certainly leave a lot to be desired. You don't see it in Tiffany, though she had an overdoting mom, and Barron, the same thing.
No, listen, I can tell you with great confidence that those are or at least three, because Tiffany did not grow up with Trump as her active father. And she grew up a long distance from him geographically. I can tell you with great certainty that those are deeply traumatized kids. There is something called legacy trauma. Uh-huh. And that Donald's neglect and Donald's inability to see his own children as human beings worthy of love and worthy of attention has exacted a huge cost in their lives. And they all are visibly dysfunctional in different ways. I agree with you about Eric that he doesn't seem to be much of anything. So it's hard to read Eric.
Very hard.
But you can read Ivanka's trauma on her face and her desperate need to be seen in a certain way that has so little to do with anything authentic. And you can read the rage in Donald Jr. Just read his tweets. I mean, this is a guy who's inherited from his father that rage, and it's the same rage.
Yeah.
Donald felt it about Fred. Now Donald Jr. feels it about Donald, and Donald Jr.'s kids will feel it about him.
Well, except they have, their mom, Vanessa, she is a helicopter mom. She's phenomenal. I've known her forever. With her strength, and especially since now the divorce, I would probably imagine that, there's a nice separation so that the kids will get the normalcy from the mom. The same way Tiffany got normalcy from Marla. Let me tell you,
you marry at the same level, at equal levels of mental health. People, generally speaking, marry people who have about the same level of mental health. So we don't know. Right. All I can tell you is the worst thing you can say about her is she married Donald Jr.
Right.
So, you don't know what people are like. Even when you have a significant amount of time, you don't know what they're like in their most intimate relationships and their most stressful circumstances. So the point I'm making is you're looking at a legacy of trauma that goes back generations in that family. Okay. Unfortunately, Donald has taken it, and his reaction to it has been to inflict his rage on the world, and he has certain perverse skills that allow him to do that. But you and I think, agree that Trump is a man who genuinely does feel he's a victim. He's not making that up.
He does. He does.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you this, Tony, because, again, with all of this being said and done, the guy went ahead and he fell asleep in court the other day. Not once, but I think twice, right? Maybe even 3 times, but definitively twice. And often when he speaks now at these rallies or even in front of the camera in the courthouse, he's speaking incoherently. I never saw him like this, before. You think that he's mentally declining? And if so, is he fit to lead? Because again, when you're mentally declining, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychotherapist, but I see a mental decline. Somebody who has that internal rage, that hatred for the world, that constant feeling of anger and rage and victimization. How is it possible then that he could be fit to lead?
Well, that's not even a question. He's not fit to be in any kind of role that affects other human beings. So forget about, I joke and I say, he's not fit to be, the head dog catcher. But to your question about whether his mental capacity has declined, and then what is that impact on his emotional well-being and self-regulation? He has clearly declined mentally. You can go on the internet now and just call up, Trump missteps or Trump, going off the rails, and you will find plenty of examples of it. He is also 78 years old, almost 79, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Is he almost 79? Yeah. So he's almost 79 years old. I'm 71. I know that my cognitive capacity is significantly less than it was 20 years ago. As you get to 80, and particularly if you've lived a certain kind of life. So first, he's totally not taking care of himself. He's eaten horribly. He doesn't exercise. He doesn't take time to relax or to renew. So those are deteriorative influences in his life. And then rage takes its toll too.
Yeah.
Because he's living, just to be very technical about it, most of his life in his sympathetic nervous system, in his survival system, reactive, a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, all of those hormones that actually, though they in the short term can help you, in the long term, they break down your body and they break down your immune system. If a guy does, in fact, and we both agree and we both know him well, if a guy spends his time constantly enraged, your system is activated in a way that takes a physiological toll. So I think the net of his failure to take care of himself physically and emotionally clearly is affecting him mentally.
Makes perfect sense. And like that commercial, cortisol causes belly fat, right? Well,
he's got that.
Right, there you go. So that's proof positive. Elevate every morning with Tommy John's Second Skin underwear. What you put in your pants can make or break your day. And the luxurious support of Second Skin guarantees everything will go smoothly. When you wear Tommy John, you're much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. Tommy John's stylish and Second Skin underwear has dozens of comfort innovations, like a supportive contour pouch and breathable, lightweight, moisture-wick fabric with 4 times the stretch of competing brands. And who doesn't need more stretch? With over 20 million pairs sold and thousands of 5-star reviews, guys like me everywhere love their Tommy Johns. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics like this one who raves that they are the most comfortable boxer briefs ever. There's no downside. Buy one pair and you'll never want to wear any other underwear again. Now, let me tell you why I love my Tommy John Second Skin underwear. See, it doesn't matter if you're a lefty or a righty. With Tommy John's horizontal quick draw fly, you get unparalleled unfurling access. And we all need access. And with Tommy John, the legs never ride up, the waistband never rolls down, and every pair comes with the Tommy John's trusted no wedgie guarantee. So take it from me, these Second Skin briefs are second to none. That's why I'm telling you, you should get Tommy John too. Plus, your most valuable assets are always covered with Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear or its free guarantee. For silky soft comfort and sophisticated style, check out Tommy John's luxurious Second Skin limited edition colors right now at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. They're going fast, so hurry to TommyJohn.com/Cohen. Let me ask you this then. You think that he's better prepared this time to take the reins of power? Like, do you think that he has his cabinet picked already? Because here's what happened. Right after he had won the election in 2016, everybody was scrambling to find people to fill the cabinet, as opposed to what everybody else does. You have your transition book already filled out, ready to go. I remember I had Romney's. I took it from Scaramucci. He had it from the office. It was a bound red book that had the names of every person that was going to be handling or taking a position in the cabinet. Trump had none. You think this time around he has his cabinet picked, or you think it's the same schmeidrade, sort of, I don't really need, do we really need a joint chief of staff? I'm just going to give it to a general and he can handle everything. Or do we really need a secretary of the treasury as well as an economic advisor?
Well, I would think he's going to fill the main jobs. I don't think he's going to actually go quite as far as you just said, but who's he going to fill them with? I think he has a much, much better idea this time, which is he's got a loyalty test. Yep. So he's not putting in some of these folks who ended up leaving his administration and hating him. He's putting in 100% full MAGA, right-wing extremists who worship him. And the moment they don't, they're out. So I do think he probably has a pretty good list. I don't know, good is the wrong word. I think he has a real list of the people he thinks, because you know that one of the things that's true about Trump is he has disdain for everyone. So it's not like he's looking for the best person. The only person who's capable of doing the job in his mind, any job, is him. So what he's looking for are people who will just bow down. I still remember that cabinet meeting at the beginning of his first administration, it's the only one, and I hope it's always the only one, of his administration, where every cabinet member, including Pence, the vice president, bowed down to Trump on national TV.
Yep.
They did that because they knew they couldn't survive if they didn't. But this time, it won't be any effort to get them to do that, because they will have already told him in 20 different ways and demonstrated in their behavior they're there for him.
Exactly. So let me ask you this then. You think that Trump's just indulging the evangelicals and the far-right MAGAs by embracing the 2025 project? Do you think that he would actually follow someone else's blueprint, or you think that he'll just adopt it as his own, make a couple of changes and say it's not the 2025 project, it's the DJT project?
I think that he will manipulate in any way that he thinks will help him to consolidate his power and increase his wealth. I think you take the evangelicals for a moment. Trump is the least religious person and the least spiritually oriented person I've ever encountered in my life.
I know a few people who are completely atheist, or he is absolutely. Maybe I wouldn't say he's the least, but I would say he has no religious conviction at all.
Now he's got me speaking in extreme terms. He doesn't have any religion at all.
Exactly.
I'll go with that. The point being that these evangelicals think they have the second coming, and they actually have someone who, as soon as they're out of his sight, he utterly disdains. Yep. What is it with these people? Can you imagine how much contempt he had for Pence's piousness? It's like, this guy's a loser and an idiot. And thank God I've got him speaking my language, but in no way do I have respect for the very people who represent my base. And that's one of the most astonishing things to me about the support he has, is that the people he is most supported by are the people he most disdains.
So it's funny that you say that, because I've told this story before, but it's worth saying again because it exemplifies what you're saying. I remember when the evangelical group that I had put together, we did a evangelical meet during 2015, 2016, the campaign, and they laid hands on him. And they asked him questions about abortion and so on. And he gave, for the most part, the answers that they wanted to hear, right? It was definitively what they wanted to hear. And so while leaving them, after they laid hands on him and all that, we're in the elevator going up. He literally looks to me, he goes, "Man, you believe the horse shit these people believe?" And I turned around and I was flabbergasted, right? Because I never—
Were you really?
I was, that he would come out and be so bold as to say it. You know, you didn't need to say anything. You could think it, keep it to yourself. But here's what I've realized, knowing many of the evangelicals in the community that are supporting him. And I'm so disappointed in some of them who I consider to be friends. This is a quid pro quo relationship. They know that Donald Trump is a religiously flawed human being. The 3 marriages, they know that he doesn't believe in the right to life. They know that he doesn't give a shit if you are pro-life or pro-abortion. They know that he is completely devoid of having any opinion on it other than what he wants out of them. And they're okay with that. It's a Faustian bargain, is how I describe it. They wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. They want their theocracy to rise and expand. They don't see Donald as the second coming of Jesus, right? They don't. But they realize he has the ability to get them what they believe, fundamentally believe, and they're willing to sell their own soul. They're willing to sell their ideology and their beliefs in order to back this guy, because he will bring them what they want. Plain and simple.
Yeah, and
they're using each other.
Yeah. And it takes me back to something we went back and forth on earlier in our conversation, which is that's a reflection of inner emptiness. If you think that manipulating and selling your soul will get you, quote, what you want, then you don't really know what you want. because, you know, we each have an infinite capacity for self-deception. We kid ourselves all the time. Yep. We rationalize our choices. The minute that you rationalize, you are misusing your rational faculty. It's the overuse of your cognitive capacity to rationalize, because the mind can play tricks on itself and on you, and it can tell you stories, because we're storytellers, Michael. You know, human beings need stories to understand the why. So we tell ourselves stories and then we mistake them for the facts. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when you do that. So this rationalization is a corrosive element in the soulful essence of what human beings can and should be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so crazy, because the way that the media is portraying Donald, the way that these AI memes that are coming out with Jesus coming down and laying hands on Donald, and you have all these evangelicals that are, let me be very clear. Donald is not a pious man. He's not like the Pope. He's not like the way Rabbi Schneerson would be considered, right? He is nothing like that at all. But yet they're trying to create an image of him being the second coming of. In fact, if Jesus came down from the heavens, Donald would ask him, why didn't he ask him permission to come? You know, it's one of those sort of things where he truly believes that he's even above religion. It's a very strange narcissism. I mean, his narcissism goes to the nth degree. But I want to ask you, since we're talking about narcissism, how do you think that Trump being in court and not in control, because you know him well enough to understand he is a control freak, that he can't control the court, he can't control the judge, he can't control the environment. How do you think that it's affecting him?
Back to what we talked about, more rage. The feeling of powerlessness, which lies at the heart of who he is, the internal feeling of powerlessness that he's been trying to overcome in all the ways that have wreaked so much havoc, is dramatically increased by being in that courtroom. You know, even an ordinary, relatively mentally healthy person would find it very difficult to be in that role, to be so much at the mercy of forces you cannot control. And this is democracy in action. This will blow up. Sorry about my balloons.
I like them.
I put up my hand and the balloons go. This will blow up if Trump is reelected, because he will destroy the criminal justice system. But in this moment, we're really watching something extraordinary. This wouldn't happen in many countries, where you take the president of the United States and he shows up and he's just another common accused potential felon.
Well, former president.
Yeah, former president. I'm aware that he's not president right now.
All right. I just wanted to make
Still
sure.
enjoying that.
Let me. Can I expand on that?
I got it.
Can I expand on that for a second?
What?
So then, how do you see the next 6 or 8 weeks of the trial playing out for Trump? You think he's going to be able to control himself in the courtroom? You think he's going to be able to control himself when he exits the courtroom, or when at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, when he's changing his diaper, you know, then he's going to go on his untruth social platform and start this shit all over again? What do you think?
I think you know the answer to that question.
I do.
And the answer to that question is not a chance in this God's earth that he is going to be able to control himself. We're already seeing that he's out of control. I mean, by any standard, by any norm that we live by, the way he's showing up over and over and over again suggests that he has lost the ability to control himself. It's never been very big, but it's smaller than ever when he's feeling powerless. Because what's the most compelling thing that's going on inside him? How do I take back my power?
Right.
And it's not by sitting there quietly in his mind. So yes, he's going to make a ton of mistakes throughout this trial. The longer it goes, the worse it will get for him, and the more things he will say. And he believes, as he did back in 2016, that, you know, he could shoot people in the courtroom and, you know, his supporters would only stand up and cheer. So he has no compunction about doing this. What he's missing is, I believe, and I hope, and I think you may believe, is that he's underestimating how people are going, like that there is a point at which some percentage of people peel away. And the peeling away is what you started out this hour saying you expected to happen and result in a blue wave. I can't get there yet, but I do believe that small middle that has at the very least determined the last several elections is not going to appreciate that behavior on his part.
Yeah, you want to hear something crazy? So as I was saying, this podcast, has really exploded. I mean, like I said, well in excess of 300 million downloads to date. The popularity of the podcast. So here's something that's funny. Literally, I got in a text message from a friend of mine, a journalist, and she wrote, "I was listening to your latest podcast. That's the one with Glenn Kirshner and Jim Schultz." She goes, "I swear to God, Jim Schultz on CNN just said that I am the reason Trump cannot stop himself from online outbursts." And obviously they're talking about the upcoming gag order motion that was made by the prosecutors. And I want to address that for a quick second, because I try to also reach out to certain individuals who are going on television. And when you're asked this question, and for whatever the reason, it comes up in basically every single conversation, people just don't give the bumper sticker answer that is accurate, it's truthful, and it's legitimate. Michael Cohen is not the defendant in this case. I am a subpoenaed non-party witness. And I have made it crystal clear, if the prosecutors said, "You know what, Michael, we really don't need you. We can do it with the documentary evidence, with the other witnesses," no problem. I swear on my children, no problem. I don't need to be involved in this. It's not my case. I sat in that defendant's chair. All right. I've been before Mueller, right? Second most named person in the Mueller report. 7 congressional hearings. The New York Attorney General, the grand jury. I've been involved now with the district attorney, the grand jury, and now I have to be a witness again. Let me tell you, it's fucking taxing on your mind, on your heart, and on your soul. And so the fact that they're saying that because I'm doing my podcast, and I ask people like you, Tony, or like a Glenn Kirshner, I ask you questions about the trial. I ask you questions about what you know to be true because of your past history with Donald. All of a sudden, this is supposed to give him the ability to violate a gag order. Michael Cohen's not under a gag order. Donald Trump is. Again, he's the defendant. And the fact that somebody like Jim Schultz can actually turn around and say that, I am the reason. I mean, at what point in time does Michael Cohen not be the guy that everybody's pointing the finger at? You're the guy. It's because of you. Everything is because of you. I didn't sleep with Stormy. He did. I didn't sleep with Karen McDougal. He did. I didn't write the checks or declare them as they are. He did. Right? I didn't have a sexual encounter or rape E. Jean Carroll. He did. You know, I don't want to be held accountable for every single one of this guy's dirty deeds because he points the finger at me. And then somehow that right-wing ecosphere, they just continue to perpetuate and regurgitate his lies that affect my life.
So I want to be your therapist for a minute. Guilt, and I know this about myself, guilt demands penance. You've been doing penance for
6 years.
6 years. I've been doing it for 30.
Oh, how's yours going?
It's mixed because I think that, first of all, I want to say to you, and I've said it to you personally, but I want to say it on this podcast, you are demonstrating great courage. You are at risk, and you don't have to do a lot of what you're doing. Most people who had the closeness you had to Trump have avoided at virtually all cost saying negative things about him, and you're doing it. And you earned the right and the necessity to do it, as I did. We both hitched ourselves to a wagon that was deeply corrupt. Mm-hmm. And we have to, if we want to end up feeling good about ourselves, we have to speak up. And you've done that. And I think it's great that you do it. And yes, you're paying a price for that connection you made with him. But you're also making your life meaningful now. you will go down, in my opinion, you will go down as one of the people who spoke up most loudly when you finally saw it about the corruption of this man in the most unequivocal way. So I don't feel sorry for you. Life brings you what it does. And then the question is, what do you do with it? You're doing the right thing.
No, unfortunately, it comes at a massive, massive cost.
I get it.
Hey, let me ask you this question. Where's Melania? I mean, she's not in court. She's not by his side. How do you think that their relationship is going? I mean, this is redrudging up something that affected her, despite what she wants to say. You know, it's not true. I did not believe it. It's a mere locker room talk and all that other horse shit, right?
Yeah.
Donald, according to Stormy, they had sex without a condom. That pissed Melania off. On top of that, supposedly Donald's relationship with Karen McDougal occurred in their apartment, in their home, right? In his bed. You know, that kind of pissed her off too. And if they aren't together, right? I mean, is he dating? I mean, I see every time there's a new female around, right? I mean, you know, he thinks that it's like the opening scene of The Apprentice, that he's walking out with all the beautiful women. For whatever the reason is, that's the appearance that he feels. Because again, he's fundamentally flawed. I mean, you think maybe there's something going on with Donald? Do you think that he's with somebody on this campaign trail, or?
You know, it hadn't occurred to me. On the other hand, he's compulsive about everything, you know. So is there a possibility? Yes. Is that likely to be kept secret? Like, can you keep that secret in the world we live in right now? Not easy. No. For somebody with his visibility. I do think that Melania, let's go back to Melania. I do think Melania made the ultimate devil's bargain. Yep. She doesn't sleep with the enemy anymore, but she lives with the enemy, or she lives within 200 or 300 feet of him. I think it's a pure devil's bargain. I think she's just decided, like, this is the best I can do. And I'm going to make it work the best way I can, which is to have the least amount of time with him possible. By the way, except when it was probably very early in their relationship, he never paid any attention to Melania.
Right.
He wasn't interested in her, because how could he be interested in her? He's not interested in anybody. I remember, Michael, maybe this is a way to end this. I remember going to Mar-a-Lago shortly after he bought it in 1986. This is when I went there to spend a weekend with him, because I was trying desperately to get him to say enough that I could write a book based on it. And I thought if I trapped him in his house, that would work. And the three kids were there. They were all under the age of 10. And Ivana was there. And in the 48 hours that I spent there, he didn't spend 3 minutes total with any of them. Ivana glared at me constantly because she needed a way to say to herself, other people are taking me away from my husband. No, her husband wasn't interested. He's not interested in Melania. He's not interested in Ivanka, Don Jr., Eric, Tiffany, or anybody else.
Let me say, but he is interested in going to Barron's graduation.
Yeah. In other words, where it serves his interest to say he's interested in something, 100% willing to do that. He wouldn't have gone to Barron's graduation in all likelihood if this hadn't happened. Actually, I think he probably would have, because I think Melania would have cashed in a chit and forced him to go.
You're probably right.
But boy, would he be bored.
So, Tony, look, the hour goes by real fast here on Mea Culpa. I have like 1,000 more questions for you, but it goes by quickly. I have one last question for you. All right. There's a lot of speculation, because Trump is really shitting the polls when it comes to women, that he's going to choose a woman as his vice presidential choice. And knowing Donald the way that we do, he'll probably pick the woman that he thinks is the most attractive, but also one that's not going to outshine him. You think that that's going to help him?
No, not at all. First of all, I don't think that.
And who do you think it's going to be?
Well, let me just start by saying I don't think the vice president, unless it's Thomas Eagleton and it turns out he had electroshock therapy, I don't think the vice president makes much difference in an election. Second of all, I don't think there's a woman that he could choose who's going to rally women. I don't know who that would be. It's not being derogatory to women, but if you think of the group of people who are in possibility, I don't think there's anyone that would substantially change his fortunes. I also think that a number of them would outshine him. I mean, some of those women are capable of taking attention from him.
Right, like he would never go with a Nikki Haley. I mean, because she's too strong of a personality.
And also I don't think Nikki Haley. I'm sorry, say it again.
She's too strong of a personality for him.
Yes, by far. No, I think he could pick an Elise Stefanik. I think, that would be a potential choice. I think he could.
A Nancy Mace, a Katie Britt.
A Nancy Mace, yeah. But
Carrie Lake.
I don't think it's going to make a damn bit of difference. I don't think anybody's going to be fooled into thinking this is it. Just like they didn't think, well, maybe they did a little bit with Pence think among the evangelicals that he would be a strong voice for the evangelicals. But generally speaking, I don't think anyone thinks anyone can influence Donald Trump.
Right.
And they're right.
And they are right. But, you turn around and you take somebody like a Carrie Lake, right? I know she's trying out to be VP, but she's universally disliked by women as well. So your point is well taken. Tony, thank you very much for your insight, your perspective, for joining me again on Mea Culpa, the last show that you're on. Absolutely crushed it, and so on. It's why, like I said, this podcast is really on fire. I want to thank you. Stay in touch. I desperately need you as this thing continues to unfold. Your voice is extremely important, and good to see you again, my friend.
Likewise.